Hello and happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. Another episode of On the Wrong Lead Live here. We're going to take a look at another kind of interesting little sequence. $1 minimum pick five that we have, combining some races from Fairgrounds and Turfway Park, the Bayou Bluegrass pick five. So we'll be taking a look at that. Unfortunately, it looks like Turfway has moved to the shorter cards. So, we only got one race that we're going to look at live tonight. Unfortunately, I believe my first guest got boomed like 3 races ago in the pick 5 carryover. Sorry, Mark.
I did get boomed like 3 races ago, but I do have a nice double into the next leg, so we can talk about my single in the last leg. We can chat that up.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I didn't have time to take a look at Turfway today. I was trying to get some work done, and I had to go run some errands because I'm going to be out of town this weekend. So I'm going to be going to Louisville, doing some Bourbon Trail stuff for my 10-year anniversary. So we are, packing. I had to go pick up snacks, which is of the utmost importance when you go on vacation, is to make sure the snack game is good. And when I think of
especially on road trips, extra important on road trips to have your snack game on point.
Oh, my wife has already said, like, because we've driven to Louisville before. I mean, and I've gone a bunch of times, but
wait a second. The last time you drove to Louisville, we're not expecting a repeat of that, are we?
That was Lexington.
Oh,
that was Lexington.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Where that was that was something else, man. I've never stood still on a interstate for 2 hours like I did that trip. But we have some places already kind of booked. We have we're doing a tour at Michter's tomorrow night. We're doing a tour at Buffalo Trace on Saturday. So we got some stuff planned already, so that should be fun. And then we got some dinner plans. Tomorrow night we're actually going to be doing like a haunted walking tour. So we got a lot of stuff planned, and we're gonna have a good time.
Nice.
But
nice.
When I think of food, when I think of stuff, especially like appetizers, or I don't know, maybe something like a shrimp, or all you can eat shrimp. And I think of Turfway Park, I only think of one guy. That's Mr. Jay Davis over here. Javis, what's up, Jay?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. Yes, I will actually be there this Saturday, and there will be a lot of shrimp, which I'm very excited for, on top of the betting. So hopefully we can at least hit some bets, but if we don't, we still got the shrimp, so it's all good.
You're like the that was it that Denzel meme, right? Where he's like, I'm leaving with something.
Exactly.
I'm leaving with something, and you're leaving with some shrimp, right? I mean, worst case, right? If you whiff on everything, you're gonna get your ticket's worth and your bet's worth of shrimp. So
yeah, I'm gonna leave with some pockets full of something. It might be shrimp, it might be money, but we'll see.
Yeah, Jay, it's been a while since we've had you on. Now you have some new digs there. I know you got rid of that big old oil tank or whatever that was in front of your house. I thought you were gonna paint it. I thought you were gonna name it Bango or something like that, and keep it around. But what else you been up to, man?
Yeah, no. So in the new house, this is officially the office. You can tell by the bare walls that we don't have anything on yet. So still work in progress. But yeah, living the dream. Still about 35 minutes outside of Turfway. So like I said, we'll be there this Saturday. Looking forward to that. And otherwise, can't really complain.
Nice. And so obviously, since we have such a special occasion, I got bourbon that actually is in the box, and you can't really see the box here.
Okay,
But
wait.
this is
Whoa. Does this mean you have to open the box and the
no.
bottle?
This box is already open.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
whoa! As I throw the box, but this is a bottle of 16-year-old barrel seagrass. So, figured I have a guest, so I should get the nice stuff out. Sorry, Matthew DeSantis. I know I normally drink the cheap stuff when you're around, but um, but yeah. I thought this was an interesting sequence. I thought this was, um, you know, there's some. I mean, honestly, I think the most exciting part for me is kind of seeing Sierra Leone run back here. Interested to see how he runs after the long layoff. Obviously, last won the Breeders' Cup Classic, and won in pretty impressive fashion. But I always like playing these. I always like playing these dollar minimums because I always feel like they always pay better than they should. What do you think, Mark?
I think they do. And I don't know why, but I think anytime you see these higher base bet wagers, and whether it be the $3 pick threes out at Santa Anita that they've been running, which I absolutely love to target that for the same exact reasons. I think when you drive the base bet up, it's harder for people to get spready, and people have to actually have opinions, and they just can't spray and pray. So no, I agree with you. I think they do tend to pay a little better, and they produce a better sequence. So I agree with you.
And Jay, I know you were a big fan of the golden hour bets when those were around. So, I mean, it also helps that they're the get out bets for the day usually. And if there's one thing that Jay, you and I both love, it's the get out bet.
Yeah, I mean, you have to play the get out bets whether you're up on the day or not. That's just kind of mandatory. I will be curious to see kind of what the pool is when you take into consideration, the coast to coast, the cross country also running. I think they announced this bet not too long ago. I want to say within like the last week. So hopefully there's enough eyeballs on this that we can get a nice pool. But yeah, I do like the dollar minimum.
Well, there's also the other side of that. If thin pools aren't necessarily a bad thing, if you're somebody who has an opinion or two, and I think I'll point out some opinions I have where I'm against some of the favorites in the sequence. But if you have an opinion and you get a shallow pool, you can scoop a shallow pool, and that's not a bad thing. I think that the market, we always try to upsell these. Oh, there's this $1 million pool, or what these big pools. But that tends to drive pool efficiency. So thinner pools aren't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think Jay, we were asking, or I saw you ask at least, the Mark Midland from HRN, what the pool looked like last year. It looks like it was about a little over 225,000 last year.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, it's a decent sized pool for kind of a niche pick five, 15% takeout, $1 minimum. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit. It does look a little chalky, so I think maybe you're going to have to get a little creative here to get around maybe some of these short prices. I see Russ in the chat saying the bar at Angels Envy is a must. Obviously, Russ is actually, I believe, out in Vegas right now, so he's probably somewhere at South Point currently eating a $2 hot dog and watching us. So shout out to Russ. And PDT saying, "Hey Caleb," I'm guessing he's talking to you, Jay. So
those are big shoes to fill. So I hope it's not me.
Big shoes to fill, but you know what? I think your calves make up for it. So, But anyways, yeah, let's get started with this pick five here. So it starts out with the New Orleans Classic here. We're gonna be going a mile and the eighth on the main track. This is a Grade 2 race here, and the aforementioned return of Sierra Leone. Now, Jay, you'd kind of before the stream, you were talking to us a little bit, and you'd kind of said that there might be some defections from this race. I don't know if you kind of want to walk us through that real quick.
Yeah, so right now, from what I understand, Kinetic and Tarantino are going to race Saturday in the Essex at Oaklawn. Uno Moss Bourbon and I believe Touch Upon a Star are kind of still up in the air. They might bow out, they might not. But I think even with, just Kinetic and Tarantino, those scratching out like really changes the shape of this race quite a bit. So I think you're going to end up seeing a Sierra Leone at 2 to 5. So Not the best scenario to kick off a sequence, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's really tough, I think, when you have a horse like this who, their like D effort is probably still fast enough to win this race. I mean, Mark, I don't know. I'm looking at Brisnet, and we know that Brisnet figures are a little, um, not the best. But when I look at a horse like Sierra Leone, right? That Breeders' Cup Classic was a 114, but even before that, we're looking at 97, 104, 103, 105, 101. Um, I mean, there's not really a lot of horses in this race that match up on Brisnet. What I know you use different figures than I do. Are you kind of seeing the same thing on what you're looking at?
Yeah, I think the argument with Sierra Leone is if he runs back to either of his two races, at least on paper, he's supposed to win this. He's much the fastest. I think the fastest fig that he's run a 109 and a 112 bar speed figs in his last two races. The next fastest in the entire field is Hall of Fame, who ran a 103 two back. So on paper he's much the fastest, right? He's much the best, and he's just supposed to win this race, right? At least on paper.
Yeah. And I mean, no surprise. I mean, I have him as a lone A in this race. I think, there's some other short prices that I'm going to try and get around. I think this is one I'm not going to try and get around. And honestly, the other horse that I was interested in is actually one that Jay mentioned might not be in here, and that's the 5 Touch Upon a Star. Obviously, huge class test here, right? This is a horse that's been beaten up on state breds the last couple races, but um, I mean, has got some legitimate speed early, and especially with the scratch of like the 1 Kinetic and the 8 Tarantino. I mean, I don't know, that kind of, I think, makes the pace scenario a little bit more interesting. And maybe a horse like the 5 Touch Upon a Star, if he gets out there early, maybe he can kind of steal this on the front end, because we all know Sierra Leone is one of the slowest horses early. Like, more than happy to let everyone kind of just kind of get out there in front of him. I mean, in that Breeders' Cup, he was 9.5 lengths behind after the start. I mean, he's definitely going to be giving up a ton of lengths here, to whoever's on the front. And Fairgrounds is not exactly does not exactly play well to closers all the time. So I do think there's a small chance that maybe this can get stolen on the front end. I think maybe the 5 is probably your best bet on that. But I really don't have anything like too creative other than that. I'm going to AC this probably. Mark, how did you kind of see it?
Yeah, I think the race comes down to what do you do with Sierra Leone, and if you think Sierra Leone is the real deal, and you think Sierra Leone can close into the pace that's here, that he handles the track, that he's good off the bench, which I mean he's shown he's normally good off the bench. He did that same thing from the Breeders' Cup Classic. Then he's a single. I just think though that I know I'm going to toss him. I'm not going to use him anywhere. And I think my real thought here is I think from a pace dynamic standpoint, he's going to have a lot to do. He's a horse that I think is very tricky to ride. He's a horse that he's supposed to have won a lot of those races that he's been in, where he's bet every time he steps on the track like he's a sure thing, and then he just doesn't deliver. And yeah, he throws up big speed figures when he does it, but I think he's the kind of horse that as a horse player, I'm gonna try to get around here. If he fires his A effort, he fires back to either of those last two speed figures. Yeah, he probably wins this by open legs, but he just always seems to find ways to make races closer than they should be, and just doesn't really get it done consistently. So the direction that I think I'm going to go in, I'm going to have a little bit of a an A/B structure here, and I'm going to be a little spready. I want Hall of Fame, and I want the aforementioned Touch Upon a Star, who are and again, Touch Upon a Star may defect. I'm hoping with the other scratches they leave him in here because he makes this pace complexion interesting, and he does really like this like this Farragon circuit. And as Josh said, he could get real comfortable on the on the front end. And then I thought there were some other other interesting horses in here. The 9, who I'm not even going to try to say that name, but Cumbrabrino Omodi, who's the Diodoro horse in here, and then also Bishop's Bay. I thought both of those horses a little bit more outsiders, a little bit pricier horses, but I thought there was some upside if you were going to go a little a little deeper. At least in time form, the 9 has I think this is the 3rd fastest horse in the race on that 2-back effort, and and I think Bishop's Bay is a horse that's sort of trending in the right direction. Last 3 have all gotten progressively faster. We know Cox, kind of continues to move this type forward, and is going to be part of the pace complexion as well. And up at least towards the front end. And as long as speed is good, he's kind of another one that's going to get kind of first round on the front runners and maybe able to close into it. So I'll be tossing Sierra Leone and trying to beat him. Probably not successfully, but that's at least how I would approach it in the spot.
What about you, Jay?
Yeah, no, so I agree with Mark. I think from a gambling aspect, makes perfect sense to toss Sierra Leone just from a value factor. Like I said, I think it's going to be about 2 to 5. However, I think for me, there's also another approach you can take here, which is to just, it's a $1 base, but if you're kind of all in on Sierra Leone and some of the other chalk throughout the sequence, then just kind of up that base to a $5 or $10 play. So for me, Sierra Leone is a solo A. I think outside of the scratches, I'm not too creative. I'd probably land on Hall of Fame, who's probably going to be your second choice. So also not great from a betting aspect, but it is what it is. When those scratches come in, this is kind of how it shakes out.
But I also imagine somebody like Hall of Fame pays a lot better than the difference between him and Sierra Leone in this type of a wager, where people are going to be singling Sierra Leone. Probably 95% of tickets are going to single him. So yeah, even if you're getting second choice, it's going to pay much more outsized than that.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's fair.
All right, let's move on. We have 8 minutes or so before the last race at Turfway. Mark, you said you got a double coming in here and you got a single in this race. Talk to me.
Yeah, I singled the 2, who is a horse that if you're a time form or a BSF person, is the horse to beat in this field. There's no horses that like to win in here, and I realize this horse is 1 for 16 or something crazy like that. Gets into the hops into the new barn. And any of the last 3 or 4, the speed figures from the last 3 or 4 should make him a major player in here. So fairly high percentage trainer is about 25%, I think, first off the claim. So and I didn't think the last 2 efforts were that terrible. I thought they were actually fairly decent efforts. So yes, the horse doesn't like to win, but on paper should be the fastest horse in the race. So I have doubles going into this 2 Sassy Walker.
What about you, Jay? Is there anything you liked here in this last race?
Well, like Mark, I am knocked out of the pick 5. Unfortunately, I did not have the 6 with Lon up, but I should say I would be alive to the 2 and 5 here. So kind of in agreement with Mark. Nothing too crazy.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know. I think right now is the 10 your favorite. No, the 10's not taking any money. The 5 is your favorite. Smart with the Heart. And that was kind of the other horse that you like, Jay. Kind of an interesting horse. It looks like he's maybe going backwards a little bit, and then they kind of laid him off here. So interesting to see that he's getting bet. Bet so much. He was 10 to 1 in the book. He's 3 to 1 currently. I was a little interested in the 3, Red Wine Lady. I think it's kind of a horse that broke its maiden here at Turfway to kind of start their 24-25 season. after the October layoff. And then, kind of went up in class pretty significantly after that. And, didn't really show much, but it seems like the horse has kind of improved since kind of coming back down to this 15K N2L level. And I just think this is a horse that uh, hasn't disappointed enough. Hasn't had that many tries at this level to kind of, I think be, just like as Mark says, it doesn't like its picture taken. So I don't know. I thought the 3 made a bunch of sense in here. I thought maybe a horse like the 6, who just is a lightly raced horse, and maybe you kind of cross a line through that last race because I mean that was probably during a time when Turfway was playing super super speed favoring. So maybe that one makes a little bit of sense, but I mean, I think you have the most likely winner here, Mark, in the 2. So hopefully I didn't just like mush you by saying that. But I might play some exactas here with the 2, with the 3 and the 6 underneath. But yeah, I'm with you here on the 2. I think the 2 looks really really good. And honestly, the Will Pace kind of agree with you a little bit on the pick 5. I think is the favorite in the pick 5, but is like third or fourth choice, I think, in the double. So I see CB for you to win. He's betting the 8 at Turfway here. So he likes the 8. Rye Smile, 30-1 in the book. Live is 17-1, so taking some money off of that. It looks like second off the claim here for a trainer who's only had 7 starters lifetime, or at least in the last couple of years, with a kind of a bug jock here, or not a bug, but someone who has only had 12 mounts. So yeah, interesting connections here. Actually moved forward a little bit first off the claim, but yeah, I mean, looked like this is a kind of a well thought of horse in the turf. I mean, if you look at the way this horse was bet last year, I mean, this is a horse that was favored, what, 4 out of its last 6 races. So, well, it was well thought of over there in the kind of the Laurel circuit, but after the claim, after leaving Brittany Russell's barn, it looks like getting a little bit lost on the board here. But I don't know, maybe some of those back races kind of fit in with what other horses have been running here. But we got 2 minutes here till this race, so maybe we can move on and talk a little bit about race 2 here in the sequence. Suburban at Oaks prep here at Turfway Park. And yeah, we're going to be going a mile and 16th here. We have 12 horses in the main field. We have 2 AEs. Your morning line favorite is the 11 White Rocks at 3-1. Won the prep for this. I believe it's the Cincinnati.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Trophy.
Cincinnati Trophy, yeah.
So won the prep for this last time out. You got Admit at 9-2. Something About Her at 5-1. As Catch Can at 6-1, Bracelet at 6-1, Resolve at 8-1, Golden Sunshine at 8-1. And you get double digits on everybody else. Mark, where did you land here?
Yeah, I thought White Rocks on the spot is going to be super tough. Pedigree says she should stretch out, the little out of distance here, without a problem. I thought either of her last 2, at least on the figures that I'm looking at, should win this race. And she's taken a step forward every single race of her career. The Delacour barn has been absolutely white hot. He's winning at 36%. And, and Carrasco seems to be his go-to jock, at least here at Turfway. So, I thought White Rocks was going to be probably a lone A for me. There are a couple of other horses that I thought were worth talking about. I know you mentioned Resolve, who's a horse that has pedigree that should be able to handle the synthetic going. a horse that maybe a little camera shy, or maybe they just haven't found the right surface out west, and shipping in for this. And I thought Rispoli coming into town to take this mount was somewhat interesting, at least. I think the Thomas Drury entry, Admit, another sort of local horse, came out of that same Cincinnati Trophy race, and seemed like Jock may have been a little bit late to get her going in that last one. Interesting to see the rematch versus White Rocks. And the other one that I was a little interested in here, well, it's kind of a big price. So let me throw it over to you guys and see where you landed, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Jay, where did you kind of land here?
Yeah, so I think White Rocks is probably the horse to beat. I do think that Admit ran well enough in that Cincinnati Trophy race against that. And Admit also kind of has an experience edge. So definitely interested in those two. But the one I've kind of got my eye on is the number 5, Bless the Broken. I think when you look back at her last couple of races, any of the horses that she lost to would be, heavy favorites in here. So I think from a class angle, that's one I'm probably going to lean on. The other one that I was kind of looking at on top of that was the 7, as Catch Can, who, again, speaking of scratches, Thomas Jonathan has this horse, and he also has the 12, who I believe is going to be in the China Doll Stakes on Sunday now in California, which leaves him with this entry. So from a price perspective, I'm kind of leaning 5-7 here, but no problem with White Rocks or Admit either.
Yeah, they're loading into the gate here at Turfway, so we'll watch this race here real quick before we kind of get to my kind of thoughts on this race. Here is the 11 is the last horse to load, and they're off. And clean beginning. The 2's kind of hustling up a little bit. The 9 looks like he's going to get the lead. But your 2's going to kind of sit, I think, a nice stalking trip here. 10's going to be just outside. That 8 Rise Smile is actually kind of up close too, which I know CB for You to Win was on here. They went pretty fast. They went 23. So my guess is that that 9's done.
His 8 looks like it's got a lot of horse.
Yeah, his 8's kind of. Well, he's already he's asking a lot of the 8 to make that middle move, and the 2 hasn't really moved yet.
You're a little behind me.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's not good. As the 8 looks like he blows on by.
Let's see. It's 2 comes back, trying right now.
Yeah, he is.
Dig in.
Yeah.
This could be super tight.
Oh, I think he got there.
I think the 2 got
there. I'm not sure about that. It looked like the outside horse. Because
they're zooming in on the 2. They're zooming in on a 2. Oh no, no, not.
This feels more like me calling these. We'll see.
I will say, Jay, do you remember? It was it had to be a race about 2 months ago, where.
That is tight.
It was a race like 2 months ago where I think you and I like both left thinking we had the winner, and then like we came back and we're like, wait, the other horse got put up, and we thought there was like an objection or something, but like no, it was like a clear. Oh man.
Yeah, where was that? Was that Oaklawn? Was it?
I think it was here.
Was it Turfway? I do know what race you're talking about, because I walked away from the computer like, yeah, we got it, no problem. And then I come back, I'm like, wait a minute, what now?
And there's an inquiry. What's the inquiry on? Oh man. They got the 2 up.
Look at the 2 up.
I don't see a dead heat.
4-1. That was a pretty square price on that too as well.
I ended up win betting that last minute just because of the price. So
Yeah,
I
I
thought that
did.
horse would take a lot of money. I was
Yeah,
expecting that horse to be 2-1, 5-2
The
range, not
four.
4-1. So
yeah, same here. That's a great price.
yeah.
The four, like reared up right as the gate opened, but I'm guessing they're gonna say
Uh,
he caused its own trouble.
yeah.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on that. But it looks like the two Sassy Walker wins. Mark, you cash a nice little double. You get a little win bet. I got a little win bet. Um, and I whiffed my exactas, but I should have listened to CB for you to win because what was that exacta?
Dude, that 2-8's going to pay stupid as an
Probably
exact.
pretty good.
Yeah, that was a
98
good
for
call by
one.
CBU.
What? Yeah,
Yeah,
196.
yeah. But anyways, back to the Bourbonette Oaks here. Um, yeah, I kind of took a different approach to this race. Um, I'm kind of tossing all of the horses that are coming out of any Turfway races, and I'm looking for some new shooters in here. Um, I have the one Resolve as a B. Um, I do think that the fact that Umberto's on this horse and not on the 7, since Umberto rode the 7 last time out, and you see Frankie aboard now for Jonathan Thomas. Um, I thought it was a little interesting that that Umberto is on the 1. So I'm definitely gonna use the 1. I do think the 7 absolutely fits here. I think that figure last out in that 6.5 down the hill race fits in here very well. So and I'm not really concerned about the distance with the pedigree here on this horse. So I like the 7 here. I like the 12, but Jay, it sounds like the 12 is not going to be shipping in here. And if the 12's not shipping in, um, and this 13 draws in, I thought this 13 was a little interesting. Um, Obviously, didn't run all that well last time out, but remember, if you're not somebody who's been watching a lot of Turfway Park, it's been like very very biased some days with speed just being absolutely golden, and I'm not so sure that maybe that we didn't have kind of the same case there in the Cincinnati Trophy Day. And if you look at this horse's other races, this is a horse that kind of is kind of a presser type, right? So I thought this horse might be a little interesting coming off the pace. And I do think though that probably, and I know I didn't put this horse down, you probably will also need to kind of upgrade Admit because maybe Admit ran a better race than you think because I mean White Rocks just went wire to wire in that race and
Mhm.
Admit closed there and was able to pass a horse like the 13 who kind of just was basically ran evenly the entire time. So um but yeah, I'm gonna be using the 1. I'll be using probably some of the 3. I'll be using the 7. um the only other horse I was a little interested in was the 6, getting after it. And I mean, call me just like a jockey simp or what, but like, why is Juan Hernandez on this horse? Right? Like, just I don't know. It's just weird. But this is another closer, right? This is another off the pace type horse, and you look at the work tab. This is a horse that's been working, like had been working pretty solidly up until in between up until February and that March start. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this horse is going to be a little sneaky here. Maybe maybe Juan knows something that we don't. Um, I don't know. This might be one I just kind of toss in as just kind of a flyer because Juan's picking this one up. I mean, hey, maybe this one just scratches, doesn't even run, but I just thought he was a little interesting in here because of the fact that Juan was getting aboard. Mark, you said you had a bomb in here. Who did you like?
Yeah, the 10 horse, Just Ruthless. This is a horse that has, some pretty inconsistent form. Debut on turf, ran a pretty nice race. They got looked like washed off at Churchill in the dirt for the debut score, which is kind of a blowaway. Comes back to flop on the dirt at Churchill, so clearly not a dirt horse, which isn't a surprise if you look at that pedigree. Go to go to the 7th at Turfway, and it fires up really nice race 2 back. And then that Cincinnati Trophy, kind of sat off the pace and just seemed to kind of collapse. But if you look at this horse's form, and pretty pronounced every other type of a pattern. The 2 back and the 4 back races were by far and away the best races. And, the speed figure of that 2 back race isn't that much slower than White Rocks, who won the race, who is going to be substantially shorter on the board. So I thought Just Ruthless was an interesting horse. I don't know what kind of trip they go for again. I wonder if they, I'm not really sure what they end up doing with this one. But horse is going to be a big price on the board, and I don't think probably deserves to be as big of a price as going to be. So that Just Ruthless had a little bit of upside. It was a little bit interesting. Again, it's probably a B or a C type for me, probably more than likely a C. But just a horse I thought was interesting in this field.
All right. Let's move on here. Race 3, the Fairground Oaks. Historically, a very, very good prep for the Kentucky Oaks. And I think you have some interesting horses like Gowell's Delight, who we talked about last week a little bit, Mark, who ended up defecting to this
Yep.
race. And obviously Good Cheer, who's in here sitting at 4 to 5. You get nine horses in here. Good Cheer at 4 to 5, and then you got Gowell's Delight and Ahava at 8 to 1, Secret Faith at 6 to 1, and then you get your price on everybody else. So, Jay, I'll let you go first here. Where did you land?
Yeah, I really wish I had like a creative pick here. I tried really hard to come up with something that's like wise guy or like, super creative, but I think this is a good chair single. Cox was super high on this horse after winning last out in like a 3-horse field. He was talking about this horse like it just won the Kentucky Derby. So for me, it's going to be a single for good cheer. If you did kind of want to lean somewhere else, I guess you can go with Ahava, who is probably wants to be sprinting, in my opinion. I don't know if this is the best fit for this horse, but you don't see many Cherry first time out winners. Came back with a pretty good fig. So second time out, who knows what's going to happen? But I just couldn't get around good cheer here.
Yeah, I tried to beat Good Cheer, um, and I'll be honest. I'm going to give you probably the wuss answer. There's a good shot that Good Cheer probably still ends up on a ticket, depending once again like what final scratches look like, and I think there is a scenario where Jay, kind of how you had mentioned, right? You leverage up a ticket, because you're leaning on some short prices. And I think if I am going to use Good Cheer, it is going to have to be on a leverage type ticket. But for all intents and purposes, right now, I'm gonna lean on a Hava in this race. I kind of agree with you, Jay. You don't see the Sherry first timers win at such that high of a strike rate. Jose Ortiz sees fit to come or sees fit to stay aboard this horse, ride this horse, and he's obviously having a great meet at Fairgrounds. And yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about the stretch out on this horse, right? I think it's got obviously Quality Road by way of City and Light on top, and then Harlan's Holiday on the bottom. So I don't think the mile and 16th is going to be a problem here. And obviously, always like to see some inside drawn speed at Fairgrounds. So I like the 3 Ahava here. I think you could probably make a case for the 2 Gowell's Delight. I know we talked about that one a little bit last week, but yeah, I don't know. I love these slightly raced horses. Kind of these slightly raced horses. Coming into these big stakes races that won their debut. Pretty nicely, and I mean, maybe this is probably just Brisnet, but at least with Good Cheer, I don't really like this pattern here, right? The numbers have gotten progressively slower, not by much, right? But 4 points slower since the end of the 2-year-old season, and I mean we've seen this all the time, Mark, where you get a horse that's very very good at two, especially a filly who just doesn't make that step. Um, I mean, it's probably too early to say that's the case here, and I'm sure time form and DRF maybe they just completely disagree with me, or disagree with Brisnet in this case. But at the very least, on Brisnet, this looks like a horse that maybe hasn't taken that step forward yet. Obviously, this is the second start of 3-year-old season. There is plenty of time for this horse to take a step forward, but at 4-5, I'll probably take a swing against. What do you think, Mark?
Pretty simple. I think Jay and I see this race absolutely identically, which is that Good Cheer is just kind of towers over this field. She's 5 for 5 lifetime. She wins by as many lengths as she feels like. She's done it at 3 different circuits, and she's won going this trip 4 times. So it's really hard to pick anything apart and you kind of pick a chink in her armor. And I tend to actually agree with Jay. I think Ahava may not want to go this far. I don't want to say the connections, got whatever Oaks fever or anything. They're giving her a shot to prove if she can do it. Maybe she can, but she's going to have to take a step forward, first time versus winners, and do a couple things she's never done before. Maybe she can make it happen. I don't know, but my concern is that Good Cheer is probably going to go off at, I don't know, 3-5 or 2-5, and there's no way you get 8-1 on a Hava. You're going to be getting 4-1 maybe on her, and I think with the question marks, you're just not going to get any value there. So I just think for me at least, you single Good Cheer and you move along. I would love to. She's the kind of horse I would love to pick some holes in. I just really don't see any.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, Josh, on Good Cheer. So I know the Brisnet speed figures are a little bit different. DRF has her last race out at an 89. The 3 prior to that were all 86, and then the 57 for the maiden win. But not exactly the same pattern you just described, if that helps out at all.
And Timeform and BSF sort of both agree that her last race was definitely her best race. So it looks like she took a little tiny step forward as a 3-year-old. Not a ton, but just a tiny little step forward. But you don't see that decreasing pattern that you were sort of talking about,
Okay.
Josh.
No, and that makes sense. Like I said, I like Brisnet for a lot of stuff. I like unlike Caleb, I like the pace figures. I like the amount of information that you can pull up pretty quickly, just from glancing at it. But just the general speed figures, I take with a bit of a grain of salt. I usually rely on time form for my end number if I'm looking at a number. But yeah, I don't know. I think Ahava makes is at least interesting in here second time out. I tried to make a case for Girl Math. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't keep Girl Math at Turfway to try it again. But they're gonna try here, do the old poly pop here. Rudy Brissett's actually 33% when going from all weather to dirt. I just think that maybe this is going to be a little too hard. I did also take a quick look at Secret Faith. Has a couple of figures that look okay, but they're basically the sprinting figures. So I don't know. I thought that was going to be kind of a little tough, I think, to get there. But and I did see my Hong Kong compatriot, Mr. Slow and Steady, said he would love to see 8-1 on a Hava, but he doubts he's going to see that. Fortnite Fun's actually asking a good question. What have you found about Briz speed figures that makes them unreliable? Unreliable's not. I mean, the figure's the figure, right? The number's the number, and I think we see that with Equibase figures a little bit as well, right? Like, there's the number is made how it is, right? There's no adjustment to it whatsoever. Whatever they basically put the times and other stuff into a computer and it spits out a number, right? Time form in particular, they massage the number manually based on a couple of things, mostly pace, right? And they look at the pace, and there's just kind of there's a human element to it, and you'll see um Craig Milkowski, who is kind of like the main figure maker for Timeform. You'll see him, and he'll tweet you out, and he'll be like, "Look, this number didn't make sense in a vacuum, so we had to split it out. We had to look at this. We had to when something doesn't look right, he reevaluates and adjusts as needed." And I think because of that, you get a little bit more accuracy. You get a better, I think, picture of ability. Whereas with Brisnet, they're just going to spit out a number, right? And the number is the number. It's what the computer says it ran. Where something like Timeform, he's going to be like, look, I don't know what happened to the track between races 5 and 7, but something happened because it just was completely different. It was way faster. That figure isn't, 10 points faster. There's no way, and they adjust it accordingly. Bayer does it a little bit as well, but I think for me, Bayer adjusts for things like class a little too much, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. There are a ton of very, very smart people who rely on Bayer figures. I know Jay is a Bayer simp. I know Mark
A
is
little bit.
also, yeah. Mark mostly uses Bayer, but he he'll look at Timeform as well, and I think he'll adjust his handicapping for it. But there's just sometimes I just like really, really disagree with the way that Bayer sometimes adjusts stuff. But like that's the thing. Like once you kind of realize the shortcomings or the positives of all the different numbers, I think you can start to kind of use them and understand them the way you do, or the way that you want, right? Because like you'll look at a Timeform number and maybe you'll see there'll be a designation next to it, for example, that says this was adjusted for pace or this was adjusted because of a slow time or something, right? And you can go back and watch the race, and maybe you disagree with what the figure maker thinks, right? And it's perfectly fine to disagree. I'm not, and Craig and anybody who makes Bayer, like anybody who makes a speed figure will tell you they're not infallible. And maybe a mistake gets made, or maybe you interpret it differently, right? And but once you understand kind of how the different numbers work, you can kind of, I think, you make your own inferences on how those numbers look. Um, Mark, you forget me. Was it Pollock Report that did that article series
Yeah,
on all
there's
the
a
different figures?
Yeah, there's a really good article series by Pollock Report that goes through. They talk about the rags and the sheets and Briz and time form and BSF, and a rough idea of how they all make their figures. And it gives kind of some of the math and some of the science that are behind there, and that really does kind of help understand how each one makes their secret sauce, right? I think when you start talking about Briz figs, my big issue with them is they do tend to over/under inflate certain distances. So you see as horses, as they stretch out, even if they run the same level of effort, the figure gets faster and faster and faster, which is frustrating. And I also have seen on Briz more so than other figures things like, oh, geez, the track came up wet or it came up sloppy or things like that. They don't seem to handle those types of dynamics as well as other products. So, yeah, nothing wrong with them though. I know how Josh uses them. He doesn't look at the figures, so that they work really good for that, or he pays less emphasis to the figures, so it's a great for that. But if you're more of a figure person, there are products that have better figures.
But on top of it too, there are times where I'll look at something on Timeform, for example, and I'll see that Brisnet completely disagrees with them, right? And based on DRF and time form, right? Because those figures are more widely used and more, I guess, quote unquote, trusted, right? The horse with the best last out buyer figure is going to get bet down. And sometimes you can maybe find where the numbers disagree with each other, and you can maybe you get a horse that's 12-1 that has the three fastest Brisnet figures, right? But for some reason, buyer has them adjusted down a bunch, right? Well, that's where that's a differentiator, right? So like you can use that to your advantage. Like me personally, like I don't use them as a end all be all, but if I see a horse that has this really really nice Briz figure and it doesn't match with what DRF and Timeform look at, and maybe a couple other things also look in line, that's a time where you're like, hey, like you take a shot, right? You're looking at different data than the majority of people. So yeah, there's nuance to a lot of it, right? And I think that, right, you're asking if they conclude which was the best. I don't think there really is a best. It's all in how you use it. Like if you were to ask me, if you were to ask me like, hey, if I can only look at one figure and like I'm only betting off figures, like I'll tell you time form is what I would use. You ask Caleb would probably tell you the sheets if he only had one number to look at, right? But Caleb also is a much different handicapper than I am, or than Mark is, or that Jay is, right? Caleb looks at like 7 different products. No joke. I'm not even kidding you. And I've seen this man work, and this man flips through products like so quick. It's ridiculous. But yeah, and Slow and Steady also mentioned, well, yeah, one of the big shortcomings with Brisnet figures is the longer the race, the higher the figure tends to be. So that's like one of the things you kind of got to understand with them is that like they're okay if you're same track, same distance, then you can probably do a little bit of comparison that way. But it's just not super great. But I think we spent. Nick Seaver saying the kids get in the way of his YouTube watching. If we can start over, you haven't missed much. Mark cashed a nice double, uh, and I tailed him to get a win bet. And Mark also bet on St. John's to lose. So because he hates Mike Rapole apparently. All right, leg 4 here. The Jeff Ruby Stakes. The also known as the Jay Davis All You Can Eat Shrimp Steaks.
That's right.
And yeah, we have a full field of 12. Once again, we have 1 AE in the 13 Candy Town. Jay, you are so tuned into this, and I know you're all things Turfway. Do we got any early scratches in this race?
No, not that I'm aware of here, which is nice.
Cool. Your morning line favorite in this race is going to be the 9 poster at 3-1, California Burrito at 7-2, 5-1 on Baby Max and Maximum Promise, 6-1 on Final Gambit. You get double digits on everybody else. Yeah, I do think that California Burrito is probably the horse I want out of the John Battaglia. Obviously, won that race wire to wire. But once again, you kind of got to think about it a little bit because the track I think was playing speed favoring that day. So you kind of got to maybe take that with a grain of salt. That's kind of why I have this horse as a B. I like the fact that this horse is proven at the distance, proven at the track. I mean, obviously they're going a half for a long longer, but so I have to include here, even though he's a bit of a short price. Obviously, the 9 posters 3-1 shipping in here. I'm a little hesitant on how this horse is going to take to the synthetic. I mean, I know he won 2 races on the turf, but those two races, at least on Brisnet, were significantly slower than what he ran on dirt. Obviously, he's a year older, year wiser, a little bit more fitness built in. So maybe he's going to be able to run on this just as well. But something, something, yada yada. Andrew Champagne, never take a short price on a horse doing something for the first time. Blah blah blah. So I think I'm gonna fade the 9 Poster here in this spot. Um, Honestly, I really like the 2 Charlie's to Blame. And granted, this is another horse, right, that is coming in here and is going to be doing something for the first time, which is run on synthetic. But I don't know. I kind of like the progression for this horse, right? They put this horse on dirt. Del Mar um, didn't didn't really run much, wasn't really bet all that much. Then they put this horse on turf, finished second by a half length, um, and came back to Del Mar and ran a nice race there, kind of going wire to wire. And then Kitten's Joy wins a listed stakes race, going a mile and 16th on the turf. Beat some decent horses in that race. So has got a stakes win under its belt already. Distance isn't going to be a problem for this horse. And I mean, this horse has won both its races on the lead, but I think has shown a little bit of versatility and has a little bit of ability to maybe sit off a hair. Um, but I love the fact that JJ Hernandez is in for this, right? I mean, this is probably the reason he shipped. He's here. He rode this horse, at Del Mar. He's back here again. And what I also like about this horse is if you look at the work pattern, you see a work over this surface, and you see a pretty nice work of 47-4 over this surface. So I think he's going to like the synthetic. And Peter Urton he's shipped a couple of horses already over the Turfway. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but his horses have been running pretty well, haven't they?
Yeah, they've been doing extremely well. I'll have to pull up the stats, but that is a fact.
So I love the 2 Charlies to Blame here. We'll see what price we end up getting on this. Nick is mentioning too. He's like, the earlier time makes me think that you want to be in the front. And I remember with old Turfway, we'd be playing with Popo, and if it'd warm up, it'd be like, all right, we're playing speed. But when it was cold, it's like we're playing closers. So maybe the fact that they're going to be running during the day here, maybe it is going to be speed favoring. So and I think that maybe that does help a horse like the 2 Charlies to Blame here, or the 3 California Burrito in that case. The only other horse I used was in just another speed horse here, the 8 Innovator. And it's another horse that we have a decent price on at 15-1. Dwayne Lucas horse. So this horse has already run like 2 lifetimes worth of races before this horse's 4-year-old birthday. So and it's a horse that's actually run pretty well against some stakes company, right? Finished 3rd in the Lecomte, finished 2nd in the Advent, and it broke its maiden going 6 furlongs in the mud at Oaklawn. I think stretched out fine in the Lecomte, and then I think the Rebel was just, I think he was just maybe in much tougher company. I think this is a much softer field than what he faced in the Rebel. And he was up on that pace, and I mean they were flying. They went 22-2, 45-3, and I don't see this pace being that fast. I mean, once again, you have to question, like, is this horse going to take to the synthetic? This isn't a horse that's shipped in early, but this is a horse that has been working very well since that Rebel, with 2 5-furlong works, one at 101-4, one at 1 flat, which was a bullet work. So yeah, I thought this is a real interesting horse. I think the stretch out is going to be good for this horse. But we'll see what the pace kind of looks like. Maybe we're going to have a little bit too much pace here. Um, Mark, where did you kind of land here?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised I ended up on different horses than you, and it hasn't been the case so far. So yeah, interesting race. I think, of the of the races in the sequence, I thought this was the most that was most wide open. I think horses, and there's sort of three horses that I used on top. I would want them all as A's, and then you could fill out some of the ones beneath. But in those three, I kind of look at them all somewhat the same, and that's California Burrito, the three, Baby Max, the six, and the nine horse Poster. Let's talk about California Burrito and Baby Max, which I think are more more similar, both coming out of that shared Battaglia Memorial. Both can get the trip. Both are horses that have, since hopping on synthetic, kind of taken a step forward and taken slow progressive steps forward as they've been raced a little bit more. Both of them were, I think they gave them both the same figure on time form and within a point of one another, in the buyer's figures. So I would expect both to take another small step forward here and kind of be major players in here. And then I also mentioned Poster, the nine for Ian Hardy. A horse that won two on turf, and then won the Remsen on dirt. Kind of disappointed to John Hancock in the Sam F. Davis, and then interesting to see him take the shot and move this one over to synthetic, but has done well in the other two surfaces, so why not? I guess the question is here, and there's always that old adage in horse racing: don't take a horse at a short price doing something they've never done before for the first time, and that's my issue with Poster. If Poster ends up as a real short price here, it might be a horse you just kind of you kind of let beat you, but is a player here if he runs back to a couple of his previous figures. And I think the race kind of goes through those three, at least for me it does, and kind of interested to see where Jay saw this, because yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, Mark, because I think we're very similar. So I've been following Poster since that Ellis debut. So I've been a big fan. I don't think this horse has done much wrong. As you mentioned, this is a new surface, but handled the turf, handled the dirt fairly well. 3-1, not ideal, but I think that might go lower. But if I were to get 3-1, I'd be perfectly happy with that on that horse. And then to your point, I do like California Burrito too. I did see an interview that Tom Drury did. He had the horse working behind some others in the morning just to kind of get a more versatile style. So I don't think California Burrito needs the lead, which I like. The other one I was just going to throw out, and again, I'm not really crazy about this price either is the 10 Maximum Promise. I think when you look at the John Battaglia race, the horse didn't have the greatest of breaks. It wasn't terrible, wasn't good. But as you look at the stretch run there, the horse reacted to the whip, only got hit 2 or 3 times, but each time it was gaining multiple lengths. So if we're looking for a price here, 5-1, nothing huge, but I do think that horse will float up in this race. So that is one I'll be using. So 3, 9, 10 for me here.
Yeah, I see. Fortnite is fun. He said, as always, he looks forward to prices in these wide open races. He likes the two, which is the horse I mentioned, Charlie's to blame. He likes the 7 as well, Giocoso here. Um, not this time, obviously, which is can basically run on anything. Um, and yeah, I thought this is kind of an interesting horse. I think getting back to or getting off dirt again, right? I think this is a horse whose two best races, well, probably three best races, have all been on turf, and then they got Derby fever. Obviously, ran in the Risen Star, and they didn't really run much in that race. So I think maybe this is an interesting horse, kind of coming back to all weather. Uh, Probably, for me, not good enough to win, but definitely I think a horse that might be interesting underneath. Um, yeah, he says that he thought the last race is a workout. I don't know if you enter the Risen Star to be a workout. I think that's a little bit, but maybe the horse just needed a race, and I think is getting back to a surface that it probably wants to run on. So I thought this was an interesting horse. It wasn't one I used on top, but I thought was one that I thought made sense underneath. Yeah, and you even said that you think he's a number. He hit the board at a big number. So, and Mark, good news.
Good news.
St.
Just
John's getting destroyed.
keep it going.
I saw 7-0.
I saw
With 3
7-0.
minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll
I mean, it's
see.
good news for you too, Josh. So
Yeah, for the whole $1.
for the whole $1, but that $1 with how you, I mean, that might cover your gambling for the weekend.
Yeah.
If you have a second, Josh, there's 2 other horses I want to talk about. I didn't know if
Yeah.
you're going to hop this out.
No, no.
Yeah, go to the 2 outside horses because I think both of them are worth a mention. He's Not Joking, the 12, and Candy Town, the 13. He's Not Joking is a horse that just draw lines through the 2 dirt races because that's clearly not the surface for this one. Best stuff, the best running by far. His has come on on synthetic, where the horse has never missed a trifecta. And so I wonder if this is one that kind of it's in. Also, Josie Carroll's barn has been firing at Turfway so far this meet. I tend to discount these horses that ship down from Woodbine, just thinking that oftentimes, like I see it during the summer at Saratoga, and they very rarely ever translate. But it seems like Josie Carroll's doing a pretty good job of it so far. So, running back to some of those fall Woodbine numbers, a tiny little step forward as a 3-year-old would make this one a pretty major player at a pretty big price. And the other horse that I mentioned, the 13 for the Toddster with Johnny V up, is Candytown, who is the maiden in the race. But that pedigree, both top and bottom, really screams synthetic. Absolutely huge synth Tommies for that one, and a fairly lightly raised horse, obviously just the 2 starts, but wouldn't need to take a massive step forward off that debut effort at Gulfstream to be a pretty big player here. It looks like this is probably the trip. It's a Calumet owned homebred. A lot of things here to like. And again, on a horse that's going to be a real big price, if somebody scratches out of the main field and Candytown can draw in. So I thought both those 2, if you're looking for some outsiders, were kind of interesting.
Anything else in this race?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I like that call on the 12. I didn't really notice that, but I agree. That's a nice pattern coming in from up north.
All right. And then the last race in the sequence, Louisiana Derby. Mile and 3/16 here on the main track. Mark, I think we talked about this for the other preps, but I want to say that I think these Louisiana preps over the last 2 to 4 years, I forgot exactly when they changed the distances of these preps, but I feel like once they changed the distances of these preps, they've started either attracting better horses or the horses coming out of them have just been better. I mean, I don't know if it's just because, like, look at now these horses are going to be running a mile, mile and 3/16, right? They only need to go an extra half furlong, right, to get the full mile and the quarter, right? They're not running a mile and an eighth like some of the other last preps. And I think the first preps already start a little bit longer. I think the first preps might be at a mile and 16th. I think the Lecomte is a mile and 16th and a mile and eighth and then a mile. So since they started doing that, I feel like these horses, they're either getting better horses or the horses are just coming out of this a little bit better. I mean, I think even last week Caleb had mentioned like he thinks that, I don't know, most of the horses that have been running in these Louisiana preps will eat the lunch out of the horses running in Florida. So I don't know. What's your kind of take on that?
No, I have the same take, and I think there's multiple reasons for it. I think one factor, and I was talking with Caleb last weekend, and we weren't even talking about a Derby prep. I think we were talking about just like the Oaklawn card or something, and a horse that came out of a Fairgrounds prep won there, and we're like, yep, these Fairground races have just come back. The Fairground winter meet has come back very strong, and I think there's a number of factors. You've definitely seen the Fairgrounds step up their game a little in the purses, so you're seeing trainers moving barns down there. They can run on turf there, and with Gulfstream putting synthetic in, they've been carting less turf races, so you've seen more trainers defect and move to Louisiana. I think, and also, just kind of the Naira over winter circuit, the racing has not been as good. I think those trainers, the Chad Browns of the world, aren't keeping as big as stables. They're shipping more, and they need to kind of balance them out between Florida and someplace else. So I think the quality of Louisiana racing has been better. I completely agree with you. I think I think these races have gotten better. So no, I agree with you all the way around, Josh. I think it's a better product. I still have the old school mindset of discounting it, and that's definitely hurt me. So yeah.
Yep, and Nick Seaver saying the extra distance and longer layoff seems to be helpful in the Kentucky Derby, and yeah, it seems to kind of be the case here. All right, so Mark, I will let you go first here on this race. Where did you kind of land?
I think you need one horse in here, and that's John Hancock. I know we were talking real quick with Jay before we hopped into things, and this thing of, I think we all sort of looked at John Hancock and sort of, I don't know, head scratched. Horse with 2 starts at Tampa for Brad Cox, not a place where he normally starts his best stock. But that Sam F. Davis was a nice race. Interesting to see, him go to Louisiana versus going to some of the Gulfstream preps. I think this is more home turf for Brad Cox, and that's probably why he shipped him here. And he's got a ton of tactical speed. But I don't necessarily think he's a need the lead type. He's just been so fast. He's been first at every call in both of his first 2 races. Seems like a horse that, obviously with only 2 starts, seems to be fairly mentally mature. Doesn't seem to have any quirks. And, in that last race, in that Sam F. Davis, he was super stubborn on the front end, and had, kind of every right to fold, and he just didn't. So he's getting better. He's probably getting better at the right time. If he runs back to his last race, he's going to be really, really tough in this race. And on the big days, I always tend to think that Spare Grounds is quite speed friendly, and it just kind of leans into his run style. So I think all signs are go in here. There's a lot of other ways you can go, but he'll be a lone A for me on basically every ticket.
Jay?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think there's a lot of speed signed on in here. So it is a question of what are the tactics, what are the jockeys going to do, who's going to rate, who's going to let go. For me, because of that, I want to lean on the 10 Hypnus from the McPeak barn. I'd like to think that this horse can have the ability to have a little more pace, sit up a little more closer than what it has been previously. Kenny was very high on this horse from the get-go. 2 back on the debut, went out for a sloppy track, didn't do great in the Rebel, but I think the horse showed a lot of promise. So for me, and again, this is tough to say when you're playing fairgrounds and going against the speed. I just want to lean in a different direction. 10-1 seems like a very fair price to me. I'm going to be skinnier in a lot of the earlier legs. So for me, I'm going to lean on like the 10 here. I also like the 2 Chunk of Gold. I don't think that horse had the easiest of trips in the Risen. So that's where I'm going to go for me. But again, no faults if you're going to take the 1 here.
Yeah, I actually, so I see David Barista, the artist, David Barista, really likes the 10 Hypnus as well. All he said is Hypnus. He's got the old strong arm there. He does hate the post a little bit though. So yeah, that being drawn out there, it's going to be tough to save any ground out there. But I think I agree with you, Jay. I think there's a bit of speed in here, which makes me kind of look at 2 other horses in here. I think the 2 Chunk of Gold I really like in this spot. Obviously, he finished second last time to Magnitude by a humongous distance, right? But what was the best of the rest in that race? And yeah, I think with a bunch of the speed signed on, I think maybe he gets a fast pace in front of him, and maybe he's able to close it into that. I hate the fact that I'm doing this, but at this point, I feel like I can't quit. So I'm going back to the built well. I'm going back to the built well. Obviously, was a impressive winner of the gun runner, finished second by a neck at the Lecomte, finished third in the Risen Star. And I don't know, maybe I'm just getting like proxy vibes here. Or you remember there were those three horses that just kept beating each other, and like each of them like won a prep. Maybe this is Bilt's time. Maybe Bilt's gonna go ahead and he's gonna win one in here. Um, I was a little upset with the ride last time because I thought that Saez was going to have this horse back on the engine. I thought that the ride in the Lecomte was maybe a little suspect, sitting off. And then I saw that they switched from Loveberry to Saez. And then, I wasn't Loveberry on Magnitude? Isn't that, he won on that horse after
Yeah,
jumping?
was that Curtis? I think.
Or was it Ben Curtis? Is that who it
I think
was?
it was. Yeah, I think it was Ben.
Oh wait, was Loveberry on Chunk of Gold? Yeah, Loveberry was on Chunk of Gold. So yeah, because I remember, yeah. So Loveberry, gets basically taken off, and then he ends up beating Bill. Um, but oh man, yeah, it looks like Nick has never left the Built bandwagon. So he's riding or dying with me here.
Yeah, Josh. Not to interrupt, but I think it's funny. Wasn't Jose riding this horse in the morning? I forget how long ago, but was like really high on this horse, and now finally gets the mount. Like, I just remember something. He was working this horse out in the morning, didn't have a chance to ride it, but now does, and he was very high on this horse.
Yeah, I love the fact that Jose gets aboard here. I mean, don't get me wrong, Luis Saez on the speed horse, I love. But like I said, I don't know what like if that was a tactics last time, like to sit like that far off. Um, I don't know. But yeah, I'm excited to see what comes out of Built this time. I'm gonna use Built as an A. I'm gonna use Chunk of Gold as a B. And I'm gonna fade the one John Hancock. Because I just think that these fairground horses have just been better. And so I'm going to take the second and third finishers in the Risen Star here. CB for you to win, saying that Bilt's getting blinkers as well. So maybe that's going to help a little bit. Fortnite is fun, saying he's not crazy about this race. He doesn't see any sneaky price horses, but he likes Chunk of Gold as well. He said last race was better than it looked, and he thinks he got held up a little bit off the turn. So he'll see there. Um, so yeah, we definitely see the last race pretty differently, but I don't know. I think this is going to be a good race. I think it's going to be a fun race to watch. Be interested to see how this kind of plays out. And I think, like I said, I like that tracks are doing this kind of stuff, right? They're doing the $1 minimum pick fives. They're trying different stuff and getting people like us, betters a little bit more interested. I think, Mark, you and I have talked a little bit about raising minimums on certain bets or, if, I think like, in the summer.
Trifectas should be $1 base. I think you've seen things like Santa Anita instant went back to the $2 pick six. I think that's actually been a good move because you've seen a bunch of carryovers and people really chase those carryovers and they get really geeked up to fire at them. I spent way more on one of them a couple days ago than I should have. Like that stuff happens, but that's fun. I think it's nice to see. I think, and again, not that I necessarily want to compliment just Santa Anita, but I think they've made a couple of changes. I think the gold, that sort of golden hour when it was around was great. I think they're doing these $3 $3 late pick threes or $5 late doubles. Yep. Both of those are been really nice wagers. They just feels like they pay so well. If you have an opinion. So no, I think I do like this. I like to see the minimums getting a little higher, especially on certain wagers. And yeah, no, I think it's good.
Yeah, I know we've in particular, like you and I, we love playing Assiniboia Downs, right? And they have that dollar pick four, right?
Yeah.
And like they don't have big fields, right? We're talking 6, 7, 8 horse fields. But then like how many times is it like you go like 1 by 2 by 2 by 1 or something and you catch two favorites, maybe like a 3-1 and a 5-2, and you're like, that paid $200. Like,
Yep,
why? You
exactly.
know. So CB for you to win. He likes Yinzer. That's his long shot play. Ben Curtis, he likes playing Catch Me If You Can. Maybe he does it just like Magnitude. David Barista agreeing the dollar super is awesome on Derby
Yep.
Day.
There's another
And
one.
Nick Seaver saying that he thinks that there's the Kentucky Derby trifecta horse in this race, and I don't disagree. I think that, like I said, these horses coming in here. I think whoever wins this race is going to be a major player in the Derby. So interested to see how this kind of shakes out. Obviously, Jay, thank you so much for hopping on with us. I know you're not a huge Twitter user, but you can catch Jay at Javis. He loves talking about all things racing, Red Lobster, and Skyline Chili. So make sure to hit him up there. And hey, if you happen to be at Turfway Park and you see a man with gigantic calves walking around, it's probably Jay. You can go up and say hi. Nick Seaver's bringing up another good point. Less call money with the bigger base. Yep. And obviously, I'm at Cherry Drank. Mark is at Two Turns. You can check us out at ontherwronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter. We'll have an episode of You've Gotta Be Shot-Tinning Me up sometime tonight or tomorrow morning, covering Hong Kong Derby. So we got a big day this weekend. And then no drinking champagne. Andrew is currently in March Madness. Mark is fully engrossed in this Omaha St. John's game where he's got Omaha on the money line. So he's hoping for an upset here. But that's going to do it for us. Good luck this weekend. Let's make some money.